This morning we were able to successfully move the chairman's mark through the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. We were instructed as a committee to find $1 billion in revenues. Through my legislation, we are seeking to open a very small portion, up to 2,000 acres, within the 1002 area of the ANWR. Non-wilderness area, again, federal lands within the 1002. We were able to move it through committee after several hours of debate on amendments and move it out of committee by a vote of 13-10. I appreciate the bipartisan support that we had for that measure. The next step is to take this legislation that has been moved from committee. It will be teamed up with the legislation that the Finance Committee is working on with regards to tax legislation. And it's my anticipation that sometime after Thanksgiving, that combined package between the Energy Committee and the Finance Committee will be before us for floor action, where, again, it'll be a chance for amendment and debate, and then final vote. You then further have conference between the House and the Senate, but my hope is that the step that we have taken today in the Energy Committee is one in several steps that will allow us to finally open the 1002 area to limited exploration and development for a resource that is much needed by the country and that will benefit Alaska and Alaska's people. I think it's been suggested that somehow or other in Alaska we cannot have development in concert with our environment and respecting the animals, the wildlife, the species that live there. I think it is important to remind people we have been successfully operating on Alaska's North Slope, on state lands and on federal lands within the NPRA for decades. Prudhoe Bay was well over 40 years ago, and so we recognize that it is challenging working in an Arctic environment, but we have done so successfully for decades. What has changed is the technology that allows us to access these underground resources. I think there are those who believe that development in Alaska is an either-or proposition, that you either develop or you take care of the animals and the species that populate the land. It is not an either-or proposition. We have been developing safely and successfully in ANWR with caribou moving through, with a respect for the waterfowl and the polar bear and the other species. We've been doing it for 40 plus years, and we've been doing a good job, a solid job, working with the regulators at the federal, state, local, tribal. The relationship has been built and is a strong one. To suggest that somehow or other we in Alaska seek to develop our resources and thus destroy the land is a fallacy. And quite honestly, it's offensive to those of us who call Alaska home, who want to ensure that our home still is as beautiful and spectacular as it always has been, but making sure that we access our resources responsibly and caring for the animals, the wildlife is a priority. Another misconception, though, is that somehow or other the 1002 area is this wilderness pristine area. The 1002 area is not wilderness. The 1002 area is the one area that actually contains the one village within ANWR, within the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Kaktovik sits in the heart of the 1002 area. There are people who live there. There are children who go to school there. There is a store and a hotel and an airstrip. So at the same time that we want to ensure that we're caring for the land and for the animals, that we also recognize that the people, the Inupiaq people who call this area home, that they too have a future, that they can have schools, that they can have clean drinking water, that they can have economic opportunities. This is what we are trying to do as we seek to develop not only our resources in the 1002 area, but our resources around the state. And again, I think Alaskans have a demonstrated track record when it comes to caring for the land, the environment, the animals, and the people. It has long been recognized. In fact, it has been decades. It was back in even the days of the Eisenhower administration that there was great resource potential in Alaska's North Slope. When ANILCA was agreed to, the Great Compromise of ANILCA back in 1980, it designated certain areas for wilderness, for conservation, refuge, but it also recognized within ANILCA that there was an area, the area 1.57 million acres at the top of the state, that had extraordinary oil and gas potential. And so it was recognized that this area would not be part of the wilderness, that this area could be explored for its oil and gas potential. So it's long been recognized that the potential is there. And for decades now, Alaskans have sought to open up this area, which requires congressional approval, to limited oil and gas exploration and production. And so ensuring that we're able to keep the promise and the commitment that was made to Alaskans under our Statehood Compact, as well as the Mineral Leasing Act, so that we can access our resources, to ensure that Alaskans have an opportunity for good paying jobs, to ensure that as a state we have access to resources to help our treasury, so whether it is to help facilitate schools or hospitals or the like, to ensure that we have a resource that is available not only for Alaskans but for people around the country and really for our friends and allies around the world, to enhance our energy security, means to enhance our national security, to ensure that as we access a resource that we need as a state, that we're doing so from a place and in a space that respects strong environmental laws, so that we don't cause harm to our environment. These are all the right reasons that we need to move to open up the 1002 area, the non-federal lands that, the federal lands within the 1002 area to limited oil and gas exploration. Well, I am certainly one who supports an all-of-the-above energy portfolio. I support renewables and have pushed our state to do more. I support our opportunities when it comes to utilizing the resources that we have on hand, and whether they be wind, solar, or oil or natural gas. These are resources that we have as a state, that we are able to share as a state. And as a nation, I think we recognize that we are going to continue to need oil for years to come. In fact, some have suggested that, well, the price of oil is down right now, And so we don't need to open up ANWR. Well, if you look at those who analyze trends, they will tell you that this is a period that we're in now that will be changing, that trend will be moving upwards, and that we will see higher oil prices. We will see continued demand not only in this country but around the world. And as such, if we are not continuing to produce more domestically, we will continue to import from other nations, again, nations that have not particularly been our friends. I think it is somewhat ironic that the real beneficiaries of Alaska's oil are Washington State and the state of California. These are the two states where the bulk of Alaska's oil goes for processing in their refineries. So they gain the benefits of those refinery jobs, good paying jobs, but also then a lower cost fuel to be sold within their markets. Because we have seen Alaska production go down in recent years, those refineries have been seeking oil from elsewhere. So Washington State has been seeing more oil come in by rail from the Bakken area. That causes some concerns from some people on our committee that don't like oil moved by rail. California has been filling the gap that has been caused by a decline in Alaska's production by increasing their foreign imports. And the bulk of those foreign imports coming into California are coming from the Middle East. Now, I don't think that most Californians think that Middle East oil is a better trade than a domestically produced resource coming out of Alaska with some of the most stringent environmental controls anywhere. So the question is asked whether or not we need to continue to produce oil. The answer, in my view, is an emphatic yes. But it does not mean that we don't look to advance our other energy potential as well. And so whether it's helping to facilitate additional renewables, whether it's hydro, wind, solar, biomass, geothermal, we need to be doing it all. But I think we also recognize that we do have a role. Alaska has a role to play on the national and the international scene when it comes to our available production and what we can do to help address issues like balance of trade, energy security, and national security, working to provide resource to our friends and our allies.